This year, over 86,000 people wanted to take part, and a world record number of more than 28,000 received the coveted letter of acceptance. The youngest, 18 years old today, the oldest, 81. Men and women from 61 nations prepared to test themselves in what has become one of the great physical and mental adventures of modern life. For most, to finish is to win. But for the elite few, winning the race is what matters, with international class athletes chasing selection for the World Championships. Men like Hugh Jones, who won in '82. Charlie Spedding, who's been first and second. Shigeru So, one of the famous Japanese twins, leading the overseas talent. All three will be with the fast men on the blue start. The fun runners, the veterans and the first-timers start on the other side of Blackheath on the red start. And this year, there's a third starting point, the green start, where those with a real chance of winning the Women's Championship line up. Wearing number 1, Ingrid Christiansen, twice a previous winner, the Norwegian housewife who trains on a treadmill. Ingrid set a world best time in this race 2 years ago. Today she aims to become the first woman to run inside 2 hours 20 minutes. And holding the flag for the women's start will be Jim Peters, a legend in marathon running, and the first man to run inside 2 hours 20 minutes some 34 years ago. Looking at the masses getting ready, it's worth pointing out that not all the records in the London Marathon can be set at the front. Somewhere, there's a man among the thousands getting ready who's trying to get into the Guinness Book of Records. Today, Gary Clark of Coventry competes in the world's biggest marathon, but less than 24 hours ago, he ran in the world's smallest marathon in the Hebrides.
Any after effects at all?
A little bit of stiffness on the legs to be expected, but I've also found that I've split it, in fact split a toe. It's taped up at the moment. I don't know how that's going to affect me. Maybe in the later stages it might start to play up again.
Did you sleep all right?
Like a log. 3 pints of lager and away I went.
Now today, you ran 3:40 in the marathon in Benbecula.
Yeah, it was yesterday, yeah.
What are you looking forward to running today?
I'd like to do 3.5.
The weather news, well, the race is a month later than usual, and it's warmer than in previous years. The wind quite fresh. One of the remarkable features of the London Marathon has been the high percentage of finishers. And taking care of medical problems along the route will be hundreds of volunteers wearing the familiar black and white uniforms of the St John's Ambulance Brigade. Every year they play their part, and it's fitting that many of today's sponsored runners will be paying them back by running to raise money for the St John's Centenary Appeal. 100 years ago, the brigade's first uniform public duty was also on the streets of London at the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria. Today, the multicoloured procession will take a very different route to Buckingham Palace. From the 3 starts, the elite men and women join up before the mile mark. Passing just beyond 2 miles, the famous home of the Royal Artillery, Woolwich Barracks. Meanwhile, the runners from the 3rd start at Greenwich Park follow a different route before the streams come together at 3.5 miles. Whichever route they're on, when they join, they've run the same distance. At 4 miles, they see the signs for the Thames flood barrier, described as the 8th wonder of the world. And on to Cutty Sark at 6.5 miles, running under the prow of the last of the T-clippers built over 100 years ago. Approaching 9 miles, they're now in the transformed Surrey Docks. And on the way to one of London's most popular tourist sites, Tower Bridge. That's at 12 miles. And on they go towards the Isle of Dogs, where the old docklands have given way to new industry and homes. Past Heron's Quay and 16 miles, where the dockers used to work, but are now very different places of employment. The course looping back on itself and passing some of the old dockland scenes. And back this time underneath Tower Bridge. They last saw the bridge 10 miles back, and now they're beyond 22 miles and in the grounds of the Tower of London. The cobbles hidden for the day by a special carpet to smooth the way. Then it's towards home. On the embankment, Cleopatra's Needle. A right turn to Trafalgar Square. Left into the majestic Mall. In the distance, Buckingham Palace, and just 1 mile to go. Birdcage Walk leads to Parliament Square. And Big Ben. Across Westminster Bridge. The welcome sight of the finish. Meanwhile, over 26 miles away at Greenwich Park, the first event about to start, the wheelchair race. Here now, Ron Pickering.
45 wheelchair athletes line up. There's Mike Karifilides wearing 11, and this is a race against the clock, and they want to be regarded as athletes here. Chris Hallam, the big, strong Welshman in the middle of your screen, wearing 4, racing against a time of 2 hours. And although our hearts will reach out for them on this 26 miles, 385-yard course, they're much more concerned with whether their tyres will hold out, and they're also concerned with the amount of money that they can raise for those less fortunate. 2 hours they're hoping to get near, and they're missing Jerry O'Rourke, last year's winner. He's had to withdraw through injury, but Matson goes in number 2. He's a very good Swede. Chris Hallam and Mike Bishop are expected to race it. Chris Hallam with a mighty pair of shoulders in the front, taking the lead at the moment. World record holder at 50 metres breaststroke, this tough guy that does so much for the British Sports Association for the Disabled. Heading away. Away they go. They really are racing on, and they are delighted that 8 of the corners have been knocked off the course. They're delighted that the cobblestones will be easier to get across. Peter Hull will be there again, Great Britain's Man of the Year. But this is a race against the clock, and they want to get very near 2 hours, and they don't want to be overtaken by too many runners.
Well, now, quite apart from the wheelchair race and the 28,000 accepted for the main event, which starts in less than 10 minutes, nearly 2,000 London school children will be starting shortly in a mini marathon from Tower Bridge. That's at 9:30 over the last 3 miles of the course. The whole organisation has to be split-second and foolproof. Kevin Cosgrove reports on the scene behind the scenes.
Runners only, please. Runners only. Could I have your registration forms here, please? Registration forms out and ready.
Throughout Saturday, runners arrived in London to collect their numbers and final instructions. 11,000 checked in yesterday.
5,001, 6,300 inclusive.
But while the centre of marathon attention was London, one man headed north. Just after 7 at Coventry Airport, Gary Clark, who's trying to run 2 marathons in 24 hours, helped pull out the plane which flew him to the Outer Hebrides and the island of Benbecula.
Benbecula, the island, it's turned left at the Isle of Skye, 2.5 hours on the ferry. Until this year I didn't have any idea where it was. and the people up there have been pretty good. They're quite keen to see me up there and give me every help they can. And it's only the second time I've actually been up with a plane, and it's certainly the highest I've ever been. I didn't realise the sun was that colour. I'm sure it's the fog in the city. Looking forward to it, no problem.
The world's smallest marathon had just 19 competitors, reinforced by others who were running a half marathon. Those who ran all the way went twice round the island. A lonely journey with only the sheep for company and encouragement.
What cheerleader? Got my name wrong. Started a G, not a B.
Gary finished in 3 hours and 40 minutes. 1 marathon down, 1 to go. Although the first was harder than he'd hoped.
I don't know who's controlling that wind, but he's certainly got something against me today. That was hard. Harder than what I thought. See the weather? Snow, sleet, strong wind, bright sunshine. Tougher than I thought. But that was a point, I tell you.
While Gary went off for his reviving pint, down in London, the traditional pre-race pasta party began. The running gurus have decided that pasta is the best food to fuel a marathon runner. Last night, 5,000 enthusiastic runners consumed 4.5 tons of the stuff. It helps sustain and fights off tiredness, but not for everyone. They didn't have a pasta party on Benbecula, but Gary Clark was determined not to miss last night's. 1 plane and a fast car brought him to London and the first food he'd had all day. If he's to run 2 marathons in 24 hours, he'll need all the fuel he can get.
Brilliant. Just what I'm after. Super. Magic. Just what do you need?
People of all ages, shapes and sizes, preparing for the London Marathon. The famous and the unknown lining up side by side. And among them, the light welterweight boxing champion of the world, Terry Marsh.
Terry, have you run a marathon before?
Yeah, I've done one once before. I got the bug for it, so I thought I'd have another go.
But you're in full training for a fight, aren't you?
Well, yeah, that's right. I'm fighting late June, early July. So, but this is all part of the training. It's all, boxing's all about stamina and carrying on going when you want to stop. And that's what the marathon's all about.
What are you not looking forward to in this run?
I'm not looking forward to the start. I'm looking forward to the finish, definitely. No.
Have you been training doing anything special for this one?
No, I must admit, I've only actually been doing my boxing training. I'm incorporating this into my actual boxing training in preparation for the fight. It should be the other way around, really, but I ain't doing it, yeah.
Now, you're running for charity?
That's right, yeah, we're trying to raise money for the St Luke's Hospice appeal. They're about £250,000 short at the moment, so that's what we're aiming for. And if we can get anything towards that, we'll be considered a success.
What would you like to run today?
What I would like to run and what I will be running are two different times. I would very much like to do a sub-3 hour marathon, but say with a fight coming up very shortly, I can't afford to take too much out of myself, so it'd be under 4 hours, a steady 7.5 minute mark.
You sound very confident.
Well, those are the athletes who are in the race proper. The fast men on the blue start. The women go on the green start on a separate start for the first time. And a quick word from Brendan Foster.
Well, I'll tell you what, Terry Marsh is more at home in the marathon, David, than Charlie Spedding, and Hugh Jones would be in a boxing ring, and he certainly is talking about incorporating his two bits of training together. But I'm really excited about the men's race because I think it's very wide open. Charlie Spedding's had all week of favouritism, but I don't think it's as clear as that.
Ron Pickering, a word about Ingrid Christensen and the women's race.
Well, Ingrid Christensen on course for a magical moment and a new record. And I think she'll be nursed through this by a number of men. She'll have some helpers. And I think it's going to be a great day for her because the weather conditions are kind. The gods have been kind. They've looked after us. It's just over 60 degrees. The sun is shining. There is a breeze, but it's a soft breeze. And I think we're going to see a spectacular run from this remarkable triple world record holder, Ingrid Christensen.
Actually, no man has ever won the race twice. Charlie Spedding bidding to become the first today, wearing number 1. Hugh Jones also runs in this, the winner in 1982. Just 1 minute to go. Streaming through the gates of Greenwich Park. Well, the race will start in a few seconds at 9:30. When the giant finger of Big Ben reaches the half hour, a field gun of the artillery will signal the start. The starters on each of the 3 points sharply lower their flags. But in reality, the whole operation is controlled by the Greenwich time signal. The signal is relayed to the gun party and the starters' assistants. The time must be exact. The countdown is in the last 10 seconds. Blue start with the really fast men chasing World Championship selection. The women away on the green start, with Christensen already looking for a new world best time. And the virgins and veterans streaming away on the red start, the first-timers and the old-timers.
A lovely, lovely shot. The sun shining down on them, but not too strongly. And the virgins and veterans delayed by the gates, and that's no bad thing because they're on a very heady mixture of adrenaline and optimism. Here they are, still on the start line, waiting to get underway.
Christensen leading the way from the women's start, and they join up with the fast men, who are running also in the 3A's Championship for men and women. They join up after 1,200 metres. And that joining point is pretty critical, and Christensen, in order to help her on the way, will be joined by 2 minders who will be looking after her and seeing that she streams and funnels in smoothly into the men's race. They will run with her for about the first 10 to 12 miles.
Quite apart from the race money, about £5 million for various charities riding on this Mars London Marathon. £5 million at least.
Actually making the pace on the men's race is Grenville Tuck, one of the famous Tuck twins, wearing at number 129. Fraser Klein, the Scot, in second place, wearing number 19. We expect these two will take the leaders along in these early stages. Hugh Jones, the 82 winner, already in third place. Brendan Foster.
Well, actually, it was Hugh Jones who requested the pacemakers. He wants the pace to be under 2 hours 10 pace for the first half of the race, and quite nicely Fraser Clyne and Grenville Tuck obliged. And it's quite important to get a good pace. If he thinks his tactics are better in having a really hard-run race, then it's quite sensible of him to request the pacemakers, because all of these athletes were looking at the results of the Boston Marathon a couple of weeks ago, which was expected to be the fastest marathon in the world. They were attempting to go for the world record, but because no one took the pace out in the first half of the race, that Boston Marathon ended up particularly slow. So I think it's quite wise of Hugh Jones to do that.
Actually, the lead taken over there by Taniguchi of Japan, when Tuck appeared to be slightly lost, which was rather surprising.
Absolutely. This is a new London Marathon where they've cut the corners. They got rid of 8 of them, and one of them was missed altogether there. It's also interesting that the other good Japanese, Shigeru So, is up there, the 34-year-old twin. And the Japanese, there they are on the left of the picture. Hugh Jones in the middle, and Grenville Tuck back in the lead, wearing 129. Fraser Clyne still there. And the two very, very good Japanese, just looking across at the English leaders, the men whose reputation precedes them.
Tuck, Taniguchi, So wearing number 3, Fraser Clyne wearing 19. And this is the joining point we're looking at now. The fast man obviously quicker than Christensen, who's coming down the road, you can see on the right-hand side, and she will filter in to join in the men's race. Of course, Christensen very much the favourite to win this, but behind there in the chasing group, the British girls who are running for places in the World Championship.
Yes, the 3A's Championship marathon race is contained in this, as is the women's 3A's. And it's interesting that Ingrid Christensen is wearing thin cotton gloves there. She knows all about cold weather, of course. One of the reasons she trains on a treadmill is that she can't get outdoors all winter. But obviously she will feel it a little cool. And the masses, yes, there they are, sending their messages out. And this may be their saving grace. The fact that they can't start running too soon and they can't start running too fast is, I think, part of their salvation. But they're off and running and treading new ground, that's for sure, for many of them.
Some remarkable stories, too, in the preparation for this. We've got the first ever man to run a marathon after a liver transplant. He's from Liverpool. We've got 1 or 2 cancer patients who've recovered and taking part. Also, a man who a year ago, almost to this very day, was in hospital with a collapsed lung. But all of them running for charitable funds. And it's expected, a survey was done last year on some 5,000 of the competitors to get some idea of how much money was raised for charity, and the figure comes out at something in the region of between £5 and £6 million. And of course the entry this year is, well, 6,000 stronger.
Yes, look out for 2377, our first liver transplant, John Daniel Jones. He's been in town all week with 1 or 2 press conferences, and my word, he's shaken 1 or 2 people. 22 from Liverpool, former paratrooper, fought in the Falklands and in Northern Ireland, and then got a thrombosis of the liver in Brunei, had an operation, had about 6 weeks to live. Tough as teak, and his former fitness has put him in good stead, because 5 weeks after this London Marathon, he's going to do a walk from Land's End to John O'Groats with 5 other members of the paratroop corps. So look out for 2377, or it might be Z377, John Daniel Jones.
Well, the fun runners still trying to get to the start. And meanwhile, the leaders are through the first mile. And it's a pretty quick pace. They're through the first mile in 4 minutes, 49 seconds. Brendan.
Actually, they're all there, David. I noticed Charlie Spedding joining that group early. That first mile is pretty quick. Hugh Jones there, who's asked for that fast pace to be run. But when the good guys, like the Japanese and Hugh Jones, go in the leading group, that puts the pressure on the other guys who don't want to go quite that quick. But when they look ahead and see the leading group, then they notice who's inside it. And if it's the good guys, then they go and join it. And maybe their own race plan gets upset a little, even at an early stage.
The men through in 4:49, and the news of the women is that Ingrid Christensen was through the mile mark in 5 minutes, 29 seconds.
Stephanie's up with that leading bunch as well, the West German, wearing 12. He's the German champion at 85 and 86, who got a bronze in the 1986 European Championships and is said to be running well. So we'll be looking out for Herbert Steffny wearing 12, just on the left-hand side of that pack in about 8th or 9th place.
Charlie Spedding, and the green just behind is Jimmy Ashworth. Dave Edge, the Canadian, wearing number 9, medalist in the Commonwealth Games. Stuck, 129, 19 Fraser Klein. Taniguchi of Japan just behind, wearing 8. Kaverno of Norway, who ran so well last year, I think he was 8th or 9th, wearing number 20. Steffny, the West German, a medalist in the European Championships, wearing 12. And number 14, right on the outside, is Pat Peterson of the United States of America. Number 11, Nick Braun of Invicta. There we go on the mini marathon, starting at 9:35, smack on time. That's run over the last 3 miles of the course, and there are 6 different races, various age groups, children from 33 London boroughs taking part. 11 to 13s, I think, are the first lot off, the girls. There's a boys race in the same age group, and altogether there are 6 children's races.
Meanwhile, the masses jogging along, nice comfortable pace, just coming up to 1 mile.
What an astounding sight that is. And how good it is really for the fun runners that they're able to go along very, very easily in the first stages. The weather is definitely warmer today, which may take its toll towards the end of the race, for the runners are out for 3 to 4 and 5 hours. The weather has been very kind, in fact, to the London Marathon in the 6 previous years. It's never been warmer than 8 or 9 degrees when they've started. But in the sun now, it's just over 60 already. But of course, there is quite a fresh wind, and that measurement's taken in the sun itself. It's not quite as warm as that when they're out in the slightly chilly wind, which is coming from the northwest.
We just learned that it's taking the fun runners about 10 minutes to clear the first mile, get through those gates. No bad thing.
Check there on some of the names among that leading group. But in fact, of course, there are about 20 to 25 up there in real contention. Kaverno is 20, 19 Fraser Klein. Taniguchi is the Japanese. Number 12 is Steffny of West Germany. Number 14, Pat Peterson, United States.
I fancy Peterson for a fast time today, David. He's only, run 5 marathons, the New Yorker, but my word, he's made a big impression. He's been in the London before, and he's had good results here. Always been in the top half dozen, but fancies himself. He wants the pace to be fast, and he's going to stick with it whatever happens.
See the powerful figure of John Graham there, of Scotland and Birchfield Harriers. He's wearing number 6. John, who just missed out on the medals in his native Scotland and the Commonwealth Games last year when he finished 4th. But he had a real battle up front and possibly tried to test the winner, De Castella of Australia, too much. They're through 2 miles now, and the time at 9:43. The first mile 4:49, the second mile 4:54. So the pace settling down.
Well, that's a very good pace, and if you look at that group, the size of the group is such that all the leading contenders are in that group. They have to be, because there are so many of them, and it's unlike the women's race, which is a one-person race, and we've already seen that. This men's race is very competitive.
That's around 2 miles, Woolwich Barracks.
Oh, Peter Hull can be easily recognised, pushing himself along with those crutches. Great Britain's Man of the Year. I said then that life doesn't get much tougher, but he says, well, we've got a lot of money to raise for others who are less fortunate, would you believe? Deborah Beals is there with him. She's done the marathon course in 4:19. Deborah wears 44.
check on the distance chart shows that this is just about 2.5 miles. Shigeru So on the outside in the glasses from Japan. '12 is Stephanie of West Germany. Parley, the Italian, up there as well. Oh, someone's got a problem. Well, imagine facing another 26 miles without a shoe. Tuck, of course, very, very experienced. And Brendan, you may remember, I think it was in '82 when Hugh Jones was taken right away from the field. I think it was Tuck who made the pace for him then.
I think it was, and then you can see the speed of the runners running alongside the wheelchair. But yeah, Grenville is a good guy. He's dead keen to see that this race is established even further, and they're all keen to have good fast times. And you know, it's about time we had a bunch of people running under 2:15, and today could be the situation for the British athletes.
I think Simon Smith knows the rules of the road. Give way to Sale. He moved his wheelchair over. There he is on the left as the runners go through. Fraser Clyne, tall with the headband, just overtaking Peter Hull. And this group really look as though they're pounding away. They're in a race situation already, no question about that. A race that's wide open this year. Good international gathering, and the British boys know that a lot depends on this, their own selection for the World Championships in Rome. And conditions absolutely perfect at the moment, as long as the breeze doesn't get up and run into their face as it did last year over the last closing miles.
News of the women's race. Christensen through 2 miles in 11 minutes exactly. 5:29 for the first mile, 5:31 for the second. So she set off quite steadily, but drawing away from the British girls.
Deborah Beals in her wheelchair there. Specially designed, of course, all geared up. Go through a set of tyres every marathon and a half.
All these leaders on the way to 3 miles now. And these are some of the runners behind them on the fast start. Good club athletes who are going through the 2.5 mile mark at Woolwich Barracks. And the next joining point is about 3.5 miles when the streams come together. Another of the mini marathon starts. And there are 6 races in all, but that's unfortunate. Oh dear. One of the mini races finishing. Reminder, there are 6 of these youngsters taking part. And the leader there is Jason Bullforce, I think. He's this is in the 16 age group. He's from Enfield. Running about, well, just over 3 miles, over the last 3 miles of the course.
Yes, 11, 12 and 13s running one race, 14 and 15s, and then the under 17s. That's where this young man is from. And there were thousands from the 33 London boroughs that wanted to run in this race. C110 pounding in nicely now. A lot of good club athletes amongst these already, of course. And that's Fraser Thornycroft-Smith from Hillingdon, a 16-year-old.
And from letters I've had, there's a lot of jealous youngsters up and down the country who would really like to be taking part in this, but of course it is restricted at the moment to London boroughs. 33 in all. That's the mile mark the fun runners are approaching, and that's Greenwich Park, where the spectators are streaming away. And in fact, beyond the Wolf statue, you can look down almost on the 6-mile mark, approaching Cutty Sark. Already the starting frame there being dismantled. And meanwhile, the leaders around 3 miles. 19, Fraser Klein. 8, Taniguchi. 12 is Stephanie of West Germany. That is the Greenwich Observatory. Reverse angle from that wall statue. Maritime Museum. And I think the leading wheelchair athlete approaching now about 10,000 metres. On the way to Cutty Sark in front of the Seamen's Hospital. And they make a little detour from the main road here around the famous T-clipper built, what, about 150, 160 years ago, the Cutty Sark. There's a special ramp built under the prow of the boat.
Oh, Chris Hallam, you can recognise those shoulders from a mile away. The dynamic Welshman representing the British Sports Association for the Disabled. 23-year-old, taken 13 minutes of his best time since he started this. And he knows he's got a big race on with the 39-year-old Mike Bishop from Gloucester. But he's really hoping that the London crowd will get him along. He says the London course not absolutely ideal for wheelchairs, but you can see that he's designed it, honed it down. He really has got it all geared up, and he's looking for something like 2 hours 10 or better. Chris Hallam has 2 hours 13:46. He's a past winner. Jerry, year before last. Here he is. And you can see why he's a tremendous swimmer as well. World record holder at 50 metres breaststroke. Always a powerful voice and a powerful lobby for the wheelchair athletes. A lot of training gone into that powerful torso. Bit of cobblestones, difficult to negotiate, but round Cutty Sark.
These are the leaders. There's a check on the pace. First mile 4:49, the second mile 4:54, the third mile 4:53. So the pace very, very even indeed. They've really got a stopwatch between their ears, some of these boys. Only a variation of 4 seconds in the mile times. That's really good pace making. Even pace running is vital, Brendan.
It's essential to try and maintain an even pace, because to go too early, you know, go too fast at this stage of the race would be foolish. But this is a good solid pace. It's around 2 hours 8 minutes, which is an excellent time for the marathon. And I'm just looking at Hugh Jones, the ginger hair right next to Fraser Klein, who's been setting the pace for him, and he looks really anxious to get this race going and get into the pace, start moving it along faster. And that's an interesting tactic, because he feels in the last 6 miles of the race he would lose out to some of the faster finishers.
Vermo of Norway taking a drink, first drinking station, man wearing 20, tall Norwegian.
And they're taking water on board early, and that's wise, because it is warmer than usual, and Hugh Jones is looking for help, and there it is. Oh, he's got that. I think actually what's happened there is the water is the first liquid available on the feeding stations, and then there's a gap of about 20 to 30 yards to the second feeding station at each mile point, and the second feeding station is a specially prepared drink which he obviously didn't want.
That's right, because it might have been orange juice or something like that, which these boys are not interested in the flavour of the drink. They just want some liquid inside them. But he's a little bit anxious. I really felt earlier on he was anxious about getting on with the pace, but he wants to forget about the fact that he didn't get his drink and just get back into the race, because he'll be a little disturbed and a little angry that he didn't do it right and it wasn't provided for him. And it's essential not to get any other activities going on in your mind, worrying about, God, I didn't get my drink and all that kind of stuff. So really just he should be settling down now.
Ingrid Christensen way ahead of the rest. She's running, what, 5:10s. She's speeded up a bit there, if that third mile time is right. I can't see that is possibly right, that time, because she's run there in 4:28. It really should be 5:28. And her time 15:28 at 3 miles unofficially, but one must query that, I think.
Well, actually, David, there was all this talk about Ingrid going out to run 2 hours 20, and her coach was talking about her running 2 hours 17 pace for the first half of the race. And I noticed those first 3 miles that she's way slower than the 2:20 pace that she talked about. So Ingrid Christiansen, very, very aggressive, great athlete, but I just think her early pace is probably not as quick as she expected it to be.
The tall figure on her right is David Ellis, the Birchfield Harrier from Sutton Coldfield. Look, just looking, he's just taking the water off her. He may well be one of her minders. She's given him a drink, but in the sense, the minder is more there to ease her way through congestion and traffic rather than just to pace. And they are looking after her. 95 is another athlete that appears to be running with her, and just checking what's up ahead. 95, Paul Wheeler from Overton. He's a banker from Andover, 26-year-old. Now, his best is 2:19.52. It's absolutely spot on for what Ingrid Christiansen is looking for.
And that 3 mile time is corrected, I think, to 16:28, not 15:28. Interesting, that, isn't it? That's the merging point from the two mass starts, the red and blue start, and they come together at 3.5 miles. Now, they've filtered down each side of the road here, the distance carefully measured so that they run the same distance exactly. And they link up now. Running along the line of the Thames now, but the Thames are out of their sight, and also out of their sight, but only 100 yards away, the Thames flood barrier.
And you have to say, David, it's a beautiful day. It's an absolutely glorious day. And that means there are going to be a lot of people lining the course when we get to the more historic part. And that will lift these athletes, particularly the fun runners, who are going to need some lifting at the latter part of the race once they start hitting the wall they've heard all about at 20 miles. But this should be a great festival day for London.
Hugh Jones pushing it along. He's not satisfied, obviously, with the two pacemakers. He's taken over. Taniguchi is 8, 14 is Peterson, 108 is Poli of Italy, and number 30 there is Roald Kvam of Norway. Caverno of Norway is also up there as well, and 109 is the Turk, Terzi. So pretty international gathering there.
And the wheelchair athlete Carl Gooch just overtaken there. Carl Gooch wearing 34 on the left of the picture.
Well, Ron Pickering was saying what a lovely day it is. It is, but I wonder if it's a lovely day for marathon running. They won't want it to get too warm, especially for the fun runners. I don't think it'll affect the lead runners. It's not that hot. The athletes are actually in the race, but people who are going to be out there for 4 to 5 hours may well find it getting very warm indeed. And it's absolutely essential that they get liquid on board at every feeding station. And actually, we were right about the time on Christensen. It was a mistake. She's knocking along, and the 3 mile time was corrected to just over 16 minutes. Just getting a check there on the pace. Don't forget, she's aiming for 2 hours 20 minutes. But I would think she'd be looking to do most of the hard running in the closing stages.
Well, her coach feels that she can run well under 2 hours 20 minutes, and I think I disagree with him, because she's had 3 or 4 attempts to go and run under 2:20, and 2:21, her world record, is an excellent time. And I think, you know, the chunks of improvement don't happen as the event improves in quality, but she's started very slowly compared to what she normally goes out. So I think her pace at the moment is over 2 hours 20 minutes, and whatever happens, 2 hours 20 is an unbelievable time for a woman. It's an unbelievable time for a man too. I mean, 2:20, there's only 19 of the men in the Boston Marathon this year running under 2:20. So let's try and get the significance of that performance, because it's easy to talk about 2:20. It's really difficult to run it.
It's a lot of things have to be perfect, like the weather condition and like my starting time and so on. So it's difficult to say, but I feel I'm much better shape in 87 than in 85. So I can't understand that I can run faster than in 85. So I hope that will be realistic to do that. I plan to run an even race because most of the good marathons have been done in an even pace, like my time in 85. So it's very important to try to find an even pace. I will try to say that keep on going. This is you love running, and this is nice. It's a lot of people around the course, and keep on, come to the finish line as fast as possible.
Should be very aware of the fact it is a warmer day today, and of course in the Los Angeles Olympics in very warm weather she had what she considers to be one of the few marathon failures when she finished in 4th place, suffering badly from dehydration. The important thing is not to be going too fast too soon. She won't be too concerned that she's slightly behind the 2:20 pace possibly, but she'll be looking to pick that up in the second half of the race.
Interesting that in her pack she's got 46. That's William Glad, Windsor, Slough and Eton, who has a best of 2:15.45. She's also got Peter Stenning, Hercules and Wimbledon, an experienced athlete. Stan Markley, Middlesbrough and Cleveland. His best time 2:16.56. So she really has got a solid phalanx of men who know exactly what they're doing. Good class runners who can take her to sub 2 hours 20. And they really are nursing her along very nicely.
It's the head of the men's race. You may be interested actually in the technicalities going on here. You may have noticed a little bit of picture breakup, but these pictures from the tracking, the mobile camera that we got there, mounted one on a motorcycle and the other on the back of a van. Their signals are being reflected up to the helicopter hovering above, and when they break up there's a slight interruption possibly through the buildings.
Well, as Turtsey took the lead on then, we've got the power boats. They're out enjoying the day too, and this is at the tower. Power boats out. They'll be racing around Docklands, and all adding to the festival scene. I think the London Marathon's taken over from the boat race, and I think the streets will be packed on a glorious day like today, and it really shows London at its very best.
Well, the marathon of the Tower Bridge is at 12 miles. Meanwhile, they're around the 6-mile mark now. And incidentally, we've had one or two queries mentally about the pace of the women's race. We believe Christensen's going a little bit faster than the official times reflect. Turtsey, 1:09 of Turkey. Hugh Jones is 5. 14, Pat Peterson, United States. 1:08, Poli of Italy. 20 is Caverno of Norway. 8 is Taniguchi. And Charlie Spedding just off the pace there, but looking very, very relaxed. The record for the London Marathon, 2 hours, 8 minutes, 16 seconds, set by Steve Jones. But this is believed to be a rather faster course due to the development of the Docklands area. The roads are better through the Isle of Dogs and also the Surrey Docks, which they go through earlier. And it's believed this is a much faster course. Well, now we've got the 6-mile time for the men. 29 minutes 25 seconds, and that was a slower mile from 5 to 6 miles, 5 minutes 5 seconds. But again, I must stress that we've got a question mark over the official times on the Christensen race.
Well, actually, that slowing pace explains why Hugh Jones was keen to take over the lead. He kept looking around and worrying about the pacemaker, and they can tell, you know, they know when the pace is slipping, even if it's only slipping by 5 seconds or so. 5 seconds a mile in the early part of a marathon makes a significant difference to the overall time, and I think Hugh Jones is obviously feeling good. He's keen to press the pace along, and he knows that some of the men behind him are good fast finishers, and he's already concentrating on that. But going back to what you were saying about Ingrid Christensen, the times that we were getting, we did have some questions about, but when you look at who she's running with, you know, maybe she has gone out in that kind of 2:15 to 2:20 pace, and that's the kind of runner Ingrid is. She's very aggressive, And we'll look later to get some time, but we may be beginning to witness a little piece of distance running history.
Shigeru So on the outside. Terzi dropped back to third. He was the man that dropped the pace, although he was fifth in this race last year as the Balkan champion, running 109, a very good runner. But Hugh Jones pressing on, and a couple of wheelchair athletes just being overtaken there. Hugh Jones is looking as aggressive as I've seen him for a long while. He really has got a determined set of the jaw today. Looking for that pace. Doesn't mind taking it on. Peterson, the American on the left, I was saying earlier, I fancy him, that rolling gait. He looks a powerful figure against these marathon runners, but in fact, he's a slim, elegant, sort of 10.5 stoner. And when you see some of the fun runners later on, when you see those coming in at about 4 hours, you'll see some incredible shapes attempting this distance. Whereas when Jimmy Peters was running his marathons 30-odd years ago, they all looked this shape. They were all spindly characters. Now you've got men attempting this absurd Everest of an event who are not designed for it. Will feel it for months to come, but are very brave out there today.
Approaching 7 miles. That's Shigeru So wearing 3, tracking Jones. And meanwhile, Ingrid Christensen approaching 6.5 miles. We're still waiting for a time check on her run. But she's in there with a group of athletes who run about 2 hours 15 minutes, and it rather looks as if she's on schedule for something inside a world best.
That's exactly how I feel, because Ingrid is a positive runner, and she's going to run faster in the first half than the second half. And without the official clock knocking around right now, looking at the people she's running with, we've just seen her run through. We have no official time on the course for the distance, but I feel like you, David, that Ingrid is going unbelievably quickly.
Yeah, I think also, Brendan, there's 1 or 2 characters there that know that she's capable of 2 hours 20. You're going to hang on to that batch, and they want to run 2 hours 20. So as well as the minders she's got a nice little group of hangers-on, because her reputation precedes her, of course. She's uncannily accurate when she's running. She has good pace judgment. So that little pack are going to stay together as long as possible.
Actually, we've now got some news of the Christensen run. In fact, she's gone through 6 miles, and this sounds more sensible, in 31 minutes 4 seconds. So she's way inside 2 hour 20 pace.
Well, that's what we expect from Ingrid in terms of attitude. She's really prepared in her own mind to rewrite the record book for women's distance running. She holds a 5,000 meter record. She holds the 10,000 meter record. She set a world record on the roads for a half marathon recently. And she doesn't have any problems about times and barriers, and she's after it. And these men she's running with, David, are top-class marathon runners.
Indeed, this is really, really quick. But one of the interesting points Chris Brasher made to me the other day, they've got a couple of minders there running about 10 miles to look after Christensen, and to make sure that she doesn't get blocked off from the feeding stations, from the water supply, because last year Greta Weitz was surrounded by good athletes, good club athletes, but she was tracked by them as well, and she couldn't get to the water stations.
74 there in the front of the picture, another of these good club athletes. Bill Damoni from Sheffield Athletic Club. He's run 2 hours 18:21, so he's absolutely spot on. That's the sort of pace. Carl Nightingale is a 2:22 man. Peter Clark wearing 1:24. Carl Nightingale 1:73. 1:24 is Peter Clark. And 61, Stan Markley, as I was saying, 2 hours 16:56. They're all around that time, and they all know exactly what they're doing.
Well, they went through 7 miles there. You may just have seen the mile marker. And over each mile marker, there's now an archway. So the athletes are in no doubt at all about how far they've run. Hugh Jones starting to get away, and that leading pack beginning to break up a little bit.
And no real sign of Charlie Spedding at the moment, Brendan. I don't know if you can spot him in the second pack. I think he is just on the left of that, but the gap is growing.
Actually, Charlie Spedding is leading the second pack, and that was a faster mile, in fact. Between 6 and 7 miles, they've gone in 4:49. as compared to 5:05 on the previous mile.
The last of the mini-marathon races for girls. Some of the 33 London boroughs, including the City of London, are taking part. 12 from each borough, and nearly another fall. We had the boys tumbling over, but the girls away safely this time. Mixture of fun runners and club athletes, all being run by the borough recreation and sports departments. Bit of a problem for the teachers, who recently have been in dispute to get these all ready, but there will be souvenir medals and VIP treatment. It's a big day for them. There they are waiting for them at South London College, Tooley Street. That's their reward for their day's effort.
Youngsters crossing Westminster Bridge to the finish. And meanwhile, the leaders out in the Surrey Docks area. Hugh Jones, Shigeru So, 108 Poli of Italy, 20 Caverno of Norway, in the headband Pat Peterson, United States, also tucked in there. Roel Kavam of Norway wearing 30. Taniguchi of Japan is with the leading group. John Graham, I think, is just at the back of that pack. And a check on the time. Just working it out, a bit of mental arithmetic there. I think they're on course at the moment for something around 2 hours, 8 minutes, through 8 miles.
Interesting character in that lead bunch, Julian Gota, wearing 66, still with the leading pack. Here are the masses, and still looking good, I must say.
Actually, I think most of those are good club runners. They're wearing their club vests. Some of you will recognise the colours of the famous clubs they represent.
And it's a good year for clubs reaching their centenary. Newham and Essex Beagles, Herne Hill Harriers, who are involved in the organisation of the London to Brighton this year. And there'll be lots out there in Rotherham Harriers have their centenary this year. It's a big year for athletic clubs. Been an appeal from the Potteries Marathon. Don Shelley wants you to know there's another good marathon going up in Stoke-on-Trent next month. If any of you want to join, it's a very good marathon, well organised. So if some of these athletes feel fit enough and recover within a month, another good marathon going on in Stoke-on-Trent.
Actually, last year, you reminded me, Ron, that the Potteries Marathon was voted the Marathon of the Year. But I had a word with Don about the course. It's a pretty tough course, and if you missed out on the London Marathon and you feel like testing yourself, well, you can find a real test starting from Trenton Park.
Yes, at the pasta party last night, we're all feeling quite apprehensive about today, and somebody got up and asked them if anyone wanted to join in an ultra run, which was a 100k race, 100 kilometers going on next month. Not too many takers, I'm afraid.
Those of you that were hoping for clear blue skies today will be disappointed, but I can tell you that there are about 20,000 athletes on this marathon course who won't be disappointed, because it's had that lovely cooling effect. And another thing that can have that cooling effect, and a very essential part of marathon running, is the intake of fluid over the course. There are 23 stations like this one here, with the helpers, all volunteers, all helping the athletes and standing out and reaching out with these cartons. They're special cartons. They've been designed specially for the marathon, and it's actually pasteurized water. And that's something of a special, to say the least. They'll be handed out. They can be squirted over yourself. They can be drunk, all sorts of things, but they are lifesavers, believe me. What about the elite athletes? Well, they've got their own arrangements. They'll have their canisters set at whatever place on the course they want them to be set. But here at the 16-mile mark, we've got 3 athletes who've asked to be given their own personal mixture, and that will be done. It equates, actually, all this water, 440,000 cartons and 31,000 cartons at this one station. It was all set out. It started at 6:15 this morning, went on for about an hour and a half, and that was a marvellous task for all these helpers. But one thing is for sure, it's going to help the athletes. But having said all of that, cheers.
The leaders out in the Surrey Docks area. Hugh Jones, Pat Peterson in the headband. Taniguchi, the Japanese. And so, those are the two top Japanese runners. And of course, Seko of Japan won this race 12 months ago. And these two really looking to impress the Japanese selectors and gain a place in the World Championships in Rome later this year.
Just overtaken Lammert Brandhurst wearing 21 on his wheelchair, and that was Julian Gota wearing 66, wearing blue, still with the leading pack, just at the back of it on the right-hand side. Julian Gota, Shaftesbury Harrier, former national cross-country champion, and 3A's 10,000-metre champion. Just at the back there with Turtsy.
They're going along at a pretty quick pace. Right on 2 hours 8 minutes. And the gap is growing. Charlie Speddy can't afford to let them get too far away. Taniguchi taking on board as much water as he can. Hugh Jones making sure this time, having missed out at an earlier feeding station. Taniguchi, a winner in Tokyo earlier this year. And meanwhile at Tower Bridge, the leader in the wheelchair race, approaching 12 miles.
Still Chris Hallam. Started favourite when Jerry O'Rourke, last year's winner, had to drop out through injury. He said he'll win this. He was talking to him last night, but he really wants to be the first sub-2-hour man. He says the course isn't quite good enough for that. Having said that, the world record on a wheelchair is about 1 hour 36 now. It really is quite incredible. We were talking to a 51-year-old Super Geordie last night who's competed in no less than 640 wheelchair marathons. Spends his life on marathon courses. Chris Hallam doing such a lot for the cause of the British Sports Association for the Disabled. Tremendous all-round athlete and sportsman. Pounding away. Tremendous weightlifter, swimmer, volleyball player, and marathon man.
Meanwhile, way ahead, the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. The new guard, the 1st Battalion of the Scots Guards. The old guard to be relieved, the 1st Battalion of the Irish Guards. athletes reach this point on the course, they've just got over a mile to go. But meanwhile, back at Cadi Sark, that's some 20 miles away. Almost everyone in this massive event running to raise money for some charitable cause or other sportsmen, because the Sports Aid Foundation, which raises money for preparation training for athletes and amateur sportsmen for the Olympic Games, they've got quite a number of athletes taking part in these races, and especially in the London Marathon. And of course there's something right about the fact that fun runners are running to raise money for some of our top amateur sportsmen. Sums of money are bandied about what top amateurs earn, but there's still an awful lot of competitors running for Great Britain or swimming for Great Britain and competing for Britain in events who are paying for it out of their own pockets.
And many must have been inspired by people like Jimmy Savile and Mad Sharples. Mad Sharples last night, she's running a course again today. It wouldn't be a London Marathon without her. But she brings back T-shirts from all the marathons she's invited around the world, and we raised another £100 on top of the money she'll be running for today. And just about everyone we spoke to, and there were 5,000 at that pasta party, everyone was running for someone else. There has to be a better cause than just running, and they were all delighted to be involved in it. And that's where the £5 million is going to come from. And it does seem that there's been a big move towards the children's charities. That's been the move this year, and that too is understandable.
As the leader out in the men's race, Pat Peterson, United States. Taniguchi, Japan in second place. So of Japan is in third place, and Peterson looks to be stretching it. Hugh Jones in the blue vest, right up there. Caverno of Norway is there. Roel Klavam of Norway also there. Julian Gota just behind that pack. The leading bunch. And what an international group it is, too. 120, by the way.
Some danger there from Peterson and from Poli. Poli's an interesting athlete. If Poli is still with them at 30 kilometres, there was some thought he was going to drop out because he's trying to compete for Italy in the World Championships, and he just wants an easy run here. But if he's up there, he's going to race for the line. He's going to be tough, and so is Peterson, who must be one of the favourites. Hugh Jones still looking tough on the right-hand side. Shigeru Su, Taniguchi tucked in there. Terzi, very good, tucked away in the middle.
The leader in the women's race, and she's around the 10-mile mark now. Well, that really is pretty quick going. If that is right, 4.5 minutes inside a world best pace. 72 in the background, Andy Evans of South London Harriers. He's got a best of 2:18. Also at there, 76 alongside her is Dave Ellis of Birchfield Harriers. He's got a best of 2:18. I saw Ian Thompson with that group as well with Christensen earlier. Ian, who was, of course, the European and Commonwealth marathon champion.
Ian last night said he'd be happy to duck under 2 hours 20 today. Minders all looking after Ingrid Christensen on this remarkable run. Meanwhile, on the Isle of Dogs, bags of activity. Some of the parties.
Down way down yonder in New Orleans, that's the land of good dreamy dreams. It's a Garden of Eden. You know what
This is where the
I
new
mean.
city of London is growing up.
Babies with flashing eyes, softly whisper with tender sighs. Stop. Why don't you give your baby fair
What a
little
festival this London Marathon has become.
stop? Why don't you come and linger there?
26 miles through the East End. Then that stately finish along the Mall, past Buckingham Palace, Birdcage Walk, the Houses of Parliament, Big Ben and Westminster Bridge.
The Gurkhas on their way. Don't think that's one of the official competitors. I think he's a mite too young. He may be doing the mini marathon as the under 13. And he may be one of the tail enders who's found a spirited little sprint for the finish. Indeed it is. Gurkhas approaching Paddy Sark. It really wouldn't be the London Marathon without the Gurkhas, would it not? Running almost in formation. I'm sure they'll form up before the finish and run through again. The new Isle of Dogs. The Red Brick Road. The new High Technology Park. The new printing works. The new indoor sports arena for London. All on the Isle of Dogs.
Leaders on the helicopter shot. Leaving the Surrey Docks area, and the two Japanese setting the pace with Peterson United States alongside them. Changing guard at Buckingham Palace. New Guard, the first battalion of the Scots Guards, taking over from the 1st Battalion of the Irish Guards. And they're really beginning to string out now at the front of the race. Taniguchi, Peterson, So, Hugh Jones, Caverno and Terzi of Turkey. Map shows you they're approaching Tower Bridge. Incidentally, if you're wondering about the women's race, well, Christensen, we reckon, was very close to world record pace for 10 miles on the way to this marathon. We didn't get an official time at 10 miles, but Brendan Foster's been trying to check. And we can't give you any news of the placings down the field in the women's marathon, simply because on these shots it's almost impossible to find the second athlete.
Well, David, on that point, we've now got a time for 10 miles at 52:07, and no woman has ever run faster for 10 miles in history. for a 10-mile race. That's like Sebastian Coe or Steve Cram going out in a mile race and running a world record for 800 meters en route. I mean, to me, this is probably the most positive and most aggressive piece of distance running that I've ever seen in my life. And I can't believe that anybody can go through and that kind of pace and break the world record by 5 minutes in a marathon. I mean, that's where she's heading, and this is unbelievable running.
There's a check on the men's pace, and they're still on schedule for something around 2 hours 8 minutes. There's the group of fun runners of all ages, all shapes and sizes, approaching 6 miles, or around 6.5 miles. They're at Cutty Sark there. And really, the sheer weight of numbers dictates the pace at which they run, which is no bad thing.
No, indeed. And the euphoria is still with them. They're nowhere near their wall, and they're getting lots of plaudits from the crowd. And every mile they tread, someone will benefit, and you can see that. There was a hospice being mentioned there. Some of them want publicity for their events because they're raising a lot of money. Now, this race, which is really boiling up. We saw the Japanese last year, Toshihiko Seko, dominate it. There was a little burst from the Japanese, but it's back to Terzi, and it's still being stirred up nicely. Look at this, Hugh Jones back to second. Terzi of Turkey has taken on the running. Then Taniguchi and Shigeru So has dropped back to about 6th or 7th. The lovely, calm River Thames means that there's not too much of a wind about, and so conditions still very, very good.
Terzi leads, Hugh Jones second, Taniguchi's third, Poli of Italy in 4th place, Caverno is 5. Peterson, United States there, and So of Japan also there.
It makes you wonder what Jim Peters will be thinking as he sees the speed that these men are running at, as he learns about the speed that Ingrid Christensen is running at, because he said he's embarrassed at how fast they're running. And talking to Gordon Pirrie, who's in this race today, he said the only thing that embarrasses him these days is when good women runners overtake him, and he still thinks he's running pretty good marathons, Brett.
Well, that happens to us all, Ron. And there's Julian Goda, who's tailed off the leading group there. But there we're back amongst the real London Marathon. These men just coming through Cutty Sark, enjoying the waving to the crowds, and there's an incredible turnout. I'm sure the weather has helped a lot, Ron. This is a big crowd I've seen on the biggest crowd I've seen on the side of the course, I think probably ever.
Lovely. And I think, for, if I may say so, this part of the race is as important as the elite part of the race. It really is. The London Marathon is recognised for this. It's the most historical course in the world. It raises more money for charity than any other. It has more runners, and that is really the atmosphere and the ambience of the day, is these fun runners that will be going on for hours.
So we get a lot of letters asking us to look out for numbers, but obviously it's quite impossible for our cameramen, skilled though they are, our outside broadcast cameramen, to pick them out in these masses. But no doubt you at home, if you've got someone you care about in there, will be on the lookout. Meanwhile, this is an astounding piece of running by Christensen. Just turning towards Tower Bridge and the 12-mile mark. And we should be able to see her there. I can see Peter Clark there, Dave Clark, the National Cross Country Champion's brother, and I know he was with her earlier in the race. And there she is, just coming into shot now. So the pace being maintained. Brendan Foster was saying this is one of the most astonishing pieces of running he's ever seen. I think we'd all agree with that. But having said that, Brendan, is she wise to be going at this pace?
Well, she's rewritten the record books at 5,000 and 10,000 meters, and I mean, today this run is absolutely unbelievable to me. But you've got to wonder whether she can keep the pace going, because to take 5 minutes off the world record, best for the marathon. And don't forget, that's a good record anyway. I just can't believe this, and I'm getting so excited about the women's race that we're almost forgetting about what's happening in the men's race. And yet in the men's race, they're running 2:08 pace. So we've got a fantastic London Marathon. It keeps coming up better, doesn't it? It gets better as the years go on.
If Chris Hallam keeps it up in his wheelchair and gets around 2 hours, he too will be delighted, and there'll be a whole world of wheelchair athletes that will recognize that as an outstanding athletic performance.
Actually, she's looking very, very strong there and looking very comfortable as well. This is very slightly built, and of course marathon running at pace is not for big people in many ways, heavy people that is. She's 5'7", but only weighs about 7'10".
And might easily have had an international career as a cross-country skier. She competed in a world championship. She was due to go into the Olympic Games and was injured. And then she took up running, and since then, of course, she's been the second great dominant force from Norway, following Grete Waitz, who was her idol. And she runs on that treadmill, and she has got a picture of Grete Waitz in front of her while she's running. So she is a remarkable lady, and she says she keeps a balanced life. She's a young son, and at the end of the 3 hours training, she forgets everything. She's not concerned with medals or money or anything else. The greatest joy in her life is to return to a marvelous family life, to her husband and son.
That's the head of the race, and there's a check for you on what we believe to be the placings. They're very difficult to pick them up. Priscilla Welsh of Great Britain in second place, but we don't know whether they're running as a group or not. This is an unofficial check. Véronique Maro, French-born, but lived in Leeds for years, is the British record holder. And Mary O'Connor of New Zealand up there with the leaders, who's been placed in a couple of London marathons previously.
The masses reach the Cutty Sark. 6 miles, all jogging nicely. Be a few question marks over their minds about the rest of the way. That's Charlie Chaplin. Now he's a docker from East London. I know that fella. He's one that's been turning out all this week, raising a lot of money. I think his name is Charlie Darby. We'll try and spot his name a little later on. It's awfully difficult because he gets so many requests to mention names because they're appeals. But Karen Richardson said if we can just mention that her and Katie and Gemma, they're running for the Halifax Scan U appeal. There's thousands of appeals out there, but I know that I've just doubled her income just by mentioning her. She'll be in that mass somewhere there. No signs of stress, no signs of heat stroke, which we've all been dreading. The first hot London Marathon. The gods, as I say, have been kind.
The men possibly be on the halfway stage now. It's Terzi of Turkey taking them along. Taniguchi's up there. Caverno, Pat Peterson back with a headband there. Hugh Jones in second place for Great Britain. There are 7 in that leading group. So he's just been joined by So of Japan. Hugh Jones pressing on, and meanwhile also in blue, the leader in the women's race, Ingrid Christensen. Brendan and I have just been comparing notes on this. Brendan, the men are going at about 2 hours 8 minute pace, which is inside the London Marathon course record, but unbelievably, Christensen's only 3 to 4 minutes behind them.
That's what I can't believe. I mean, that would work out her finishing about 6 or 7, well, more than 6, about 8 minutes behind them at the finish. And if they're running 2:08, that means 2:15, 2:16. I mean, you've seen a lot more races and tracks all around the world for many years, David. Have you ever seen anybody break a world record en route to a distance running performance?
Well, that's what's astounding. I mean, it makes you want to keep questioning the clock. Dave Ellis there, just giving her a lead. Just going through at Kirsty Jacobson, that is, at just beyond the tower. I would think she's in 2nd or 3rd place.
The underdogs, Chris Hallam, still pounding away, keeping up a terrific rhythm. And starting a Welsh region of the British Sports Association for the Disabled. He wants the Welsh to get their own recognition. He's on that charity today, determined to do it.
News of the men's race. They've gone through halfway in 64 minutes, 27 seconds. Hugh Jones, the leader. Peterson alongside him. He's 27. Got a personal best of just over 2 hours, 11 minutes. He was 4th in last year's London Marathon, so he knows his way through these streets. And 6th the year before.
It was good enough to say last night that he thought this was probably the greatest marathon in the world. He's experienced the New York. He knows about the Boston. Peterson grew up in New York, but he says the atmosphere here, the organisation of this Mars London Marathon is perfect for him, and he really is going for a lifetime best today. And if he does that, of course, then he could very much, he could certainly finish in the medals.
Well, he's way on schedule for that lifetime best. Hugh Jones 5, Taniguchi is 8, Caverno is 20, 14 is Pat Peterson. Don't know whether our cameraman can hear us out there on the road, but if he could just widen the shot, we can give you the whole of the leading group. I wonder if he can hear me. That looks if he can. Terzi of Turkey is there. So of Japan is there. Poli of Italy. Roel Kavam of Norway. Al Mustafa of Morocco, 120. I don't know whether he's still with that leading group. I haven't seen him for some time. So's right at the back of the leading group. But what an international field this is. And I think there's only one Briton in that leading group, Hugh Jones. And it'd be interesting to see what sort of gap there is from that leading group to the chasing group, in which Charlie Spedding, one of the pre-race favourites, should be. He was leading the second group the last time we saw them. News now of the women's race, and Christensen at halfway, 69 minutes 27 seconds, just 5 minutes behind the leading men, and that is the fastest half marathon ever run by a woman in Great Britain.
And another indication of the speed she's running at is the fact that a group of minders is thinning down just a bit. So some of those 2-hour 20 men are feeling the pace as Christensen drives on in this remarkable run.
Taniguchi wearing 8. Who's coached, by the way, by Shigeru So, who's just behind him wearing number 3.
Interesting too, David, that the Japanese are back as a force of international marathon runners with, what, 6 men in the world's top 20 at the moment.
That's Charlie Spedding leading the second group, but there's quite a big gap there, and I would think actually the winner's going to come from that leading group, Brendan.
Well, it looks as though that's the right conclusion. Charlie Spedding there, not only running to win this race, but he's also running for a place in the British team for the World Championships. So there's only one Briton ahead of him, so he'll be well aware of that. But right next to Charlie Spedding, John Graham. The two of them are battling it out, but Charlie's seriously considering running the second half of the race faster than the first half. He's got a lot to do. The gap we're not exactly sure of in time, but it looks to be quite a long way. But I'm pleased to see that Charlie's still running strongly. And John Graham, who I really rate as having been a very, very good marathon runner over the years, running right next to Charlie. It's good to see him coming back like this. First time we've seen him in London. and I'm delighted to see that.
Steve Jones will be watching this race with interest because he elected to go for the Boston Marathon earlier when he finished second to Seko of Japan, last year's London winner. And Steve Jones will be watching a little anxiously because the Boston Marathon was comparatively slow due to headwinds, so the selectors may have a problem when they meet later today in picking the British team for the World Championship. But Hugh Jones looks as if he's securing his place. He really is driving on in front.
The estimated finishing time, 2 hours 7 plus. That's a bit ambitious, I think, at the moment.
Meanwhile, from the grim determination up front, some of the characters are miles behind now. Some 6 to 7 miles behind, but they won't care about that. Finishing is all important for them.
I saw Bernie Clifton go through earlier, looking good too, with a different ostrich or emu this time. He's carrying it on a shoulder harness, and there'll be some well-known names and faces, and some of those who may not be so well designed for running the marathon, but are really doing a marvellous job here today, entertaining the crowd. L949. Big smile. Sylvia Meadows from Grimsby has a best of 4 hours 15:12, and she doesn't care what time she finishes in. What about all the twos? 2-2, 2-2. One of half a dozen clowns. And that's Ralph Arliss from Camden. Best of 2 hours 45:20, which is not bad. Oh, nice. We'll get you when you come back. 68A, plodding along nicely. Anthony Cole from Oldham, an engineer, one of the many engineers. They're the biggest force out, over 800 engineers on the course today. 4 politicians, but 800 engineers, 600 plus teachers.
News of Ingrid Christensen. Some of these times are a little contradictory. She was given 69.27 officially at halfway, but we believe it's a minute faster than that, in fact, and probably around 68.27. Way inside world record pace.
And the good quality minders, David, are still there. That's the crucial part, I think. They may be struggling a bit, but they've done a masterly job of looking after her interests. Look at them all spread out to give her lots of free space to move around.
This is one of the reasons why Ingrid chose to come to London rather than go to Boston, where she was offered a lot more money to run in Boston. And Boston potentially is a faster course because you can often get a wind behind you, and it could be a wind-assisted course. But Ingrid said she likes to come to London because the people who organise London Marathon know how to take care of the runners. And she said, in fact, the people who run the London Marathon and organise it were runners themselves. So Chris Brasher and John Disley getting accolades from Ingrid Christensen, telling the world that they know how to organise an event.
Preparations in hand at the finish. Crowds gathering.
They've got a long way to go, these runners still. They're 20 miles from that finishing point. Well, looks like Mr. Frankham, relative of Johnny Frankham, the former national hunt jockey champion, juggles his way around the course each year.
Yes, it is. Colin, age 42, best of 4 hours 26, juggling all the way.
Hugh Jones out in the Isle of Dogs. It's a big loop actually from Tower Bridge when they go over Tower Bridge, back round the Isle of Dogs, and when they come back off the Isle of Dogs and back underneath Tower Bridge, that's a loop of 10 miles.
Hugh makes it look harder work than some of the others, doesn't he, David? Look at that arm swing. It's much more positive. He's really grim and gritty. The others are rather more economic in their running, particularly with their arm work there, just keeping them gently by the side. But Hugh pounding it out. He's always looked a tough runner, and that's he's in that role at the moment.
Actually, he's a very flat-footed runner, but there's a reason for that. In fact, he's had terrible Achilles problems and an operation.
That's right, but he's come through it well. He's got those injuries behind him, and he's really running well today. He's been keen, and he's been pushing the pace since about 3 miles when the pacemakers weren't quite doing the job for him. And they're now running around about 2 hours 8 minute pace, which would be a course record if they continued it. But there's a lot of running to do, and this race is still to be won because it's very, very competitive in there. That Japanese has looked good all the time. He's stayed off the pace, but he just stayed with the group.
Interesting that his coach, Shigeru So, has lost touch there. Taniguchi is 27, wears number 8. His best time's just over 2 hours 10 minutes, in fact just a second over. He won the Tokyo Marathon in February this year. So obviously a man very much in form.
The Puffers and Panthers towards the tail end. They won't mind, they're out for the whole day anyway. 6 miles gone, about a day and a half to come.
Meanwhile, there's plenty of entertainment along the route. This is around 16 miles now. And that band you're listening to in the background, very, very close to them now. But they won't be bothered about the scenery or the music. There's a lot of hard running still to be done. This is around 16 miles.
And that's the red brick road of the Enterprise Zone. You see the ships moored up there. One of those, a restaurant and the new factory estates opening up. 60,000 jobs being created in that new area of regeneration of London. Taniguchi, Vermo, Mustafa still with that group. Poli, look out for him, and Terzi from Turkey. Peterson, of course. And if anyone's going to suffer from the sun, if it gets any brighter, it would, of course, be Hugh. This Ranelagh man runs in his Ranelagh vest all the time. And being fair-skinned and red-haired, he doesn't like the very hot weather.
That's the second group going through, led by Charlie Spedding still. They're not all that far behind, in fact. They're 15 to 20 seconds behind. So it's really a question of pace judgment. Has Charlie Spedding got it right, or will he be able to close that gap? It's an awkward gap, but of course, if the other athletes have not judged the pace absolutely right, they could suffer in the closing stages, and that could be to Charlie's advantage.
And Dave Edge is up there with him too.
Well, Charlie will certainly know what his pace is going to be like, because he'll have timed the first half and he'll know exactly what he did. But I've just noticed there that he's dropped John Graham, who was running alongside him earlier, who's now some 4 or 5 places behind. But there's Charlie, looking good, looking strong, and beginning to work at it, and beginning to press on and try and close the gap, because 20 seconds at this point of the marathon race is certainly not too much to handle. looking down the road there, we can start to see the gap. Well, that gap is not excessive, and Charlie certainly knows what he's doing.
And there's nothing wrong with his form. He looks as though he's swinging along nicely, Charlie, I must say. No signs of stress. He's not had to drop back off a pace. He looks as though he knows what he's doing.
Actually, Charlie Spedding's got a very, very fine record in marathon runs. He's only been out of the first 3 once ever, and I think he's run about 7 marathons. Today is his 7th, and the only time he's not been in the first 3 was in the Commonwealth Games last year, when for some unexplainable reason he suffered from cramp. The oldest man going through at Cutty Sark, he's 81, and this is Richard Dolph, member of the Invicta East Kent Athletic Club, comes from Canterbury.
And under his occupation it says retired.
Certainly he won't be retiring today. He's run several marathons, I think, before, and he's got a best time of 5 hours 14 minutes. I don't think he'll crack that today, but he's on the way.
He's a great grandfather, I can tell you that, and he's got a lot of support for his run today.
The leading group. Al Mustafa, that is, of Morocco, is running the race of his life today. Peterson's off the pace, and Spedding is closing. There's no question about that. Not quite sure who that is just behind Charlie Spedding.
David Edge of Canada is certainly 2 paces behind Charlie Spedding, so there's some good quality marathon runners in that group who may have preferred the sort of pace that Charlie is running at. But it's a surprise to see Peterson off the pace at the moment. Just dropped back by about 30 metres.
It looks like number 38 with Charlie Spedding there. And that's, if it's right, that's Foster of Sunderland. Best time of 2 hours 15. So he's, if it is Steve Foster of Sunderland, he's knocking out something a bit special today.
And the good thing for Charlie is that he speaks the same language. .43R. He's going to take his own pace, that's for certain. That's Simeon Whitehouse, Tipton Harrier, 77 years of age.
There we are in the Isle of Dogs, the lead lady, and we are told that the time of 69.27 at the halfway mark is probably wrong, as we suspected. It's faster than that. But she's in a crucial part of the race now, way out in Dockland, and this is where it's really going to be telling.
Fascinating question, David, is at the end of this, how many men are going to finish ahead of Ingrid Christensen? There are over 20,000 out there today, men and women, but how many men are going to finish faster than this woman?
Well, we suspect actually that she went through halfway in 68.27. John Disley, who's with the timing device, which is leading that section of the race, agrees that there's something wrong with 69.27. He believes it was faster than that as well. But whatever it is, it's way inside world record pace and the fastest half marathon ever run in this country.
It's an incredible run, but the group ahead of her, when I've just looked through the group, there's Dave Ellis of Birchfield Harriers, who's run 2:18 for a marathon. There's Stan Markley from Middlesbrough Harriers, who's run 2:16 for a marathon. There's Ozzy Arif, who's run 2:16, and Bill Damoni have run 2:18. So everybody who she's running with are already established, having run well under 2 hours 20 minutes.
There's one up there, Michael Halverson of Denmark, who's run 2:22. He's still with them, Brendan. That might be a surprise. Taniguchi looks across. Hugh Jones digging in. looking down. Mustafa still there and running very well indeed. Morocco finding another splendid athlete in Mustafa. 4:54 for the last mile. That really is tremendous pace. Course record seriously in doubt.
Because I must stress once more that the course has changed slightly through the development of Dockland, and they believe, John Disley and Chris Brasher, the race organisers, this to be a faster course.
They've actually got rid of 8 corners, as well as made the cobblestones easier with that special surface they've laid down. So that's crucial to these athletes.
Still can't spot who that is with Charlie Spedding, but there's no doubt at all that they are closing the gap slightly. The old and the new side by side. In the foreground, areas still to be developed. In the background, the new industry and new homes.
Now here's a man who really doesn't care how fast he goes. He'd rather stay up there and collect. Well done indeed.
He's going to be out there an awful long time, and indeed the roads, by the way, are open to traffic after 4.5 hours, so the slower athletes have then got to act as pedestrians. Well, this is a landmark for a lot of these athletes. Approaching halfway now and over Tower Bridge. 12 miles behind them, over 14 still to go.
Jazz bands to military bands. The changing face of the Isle of Dogs to the consistent face of the Mall.
Actually, I thought there was something wrong before. That's number 10 alongside Charlie Spedding, and not Foster of Sunderland, who's Sujek of Poland. We've seen him as an international track athlete many times. He's got a best time of just over 2 hours 11 minutes. Ideal company there for Charlie Spedding to try and get him back to the leading group. Kujak, who won the Berlin Marathon last year.
This man, Kvelmo, in second is going well. He's a 2-hour 12 man, and he's well ahead of that schedule. He's been in second or third, tall Norwegian there. On the shoulder of Hugh Jones, he's running beyond himself and looking quite good at the moment, Bren.
He is, yes, and if you that just underlines the international flavour of this event, doesn't it? There's an Englishman in the lead, there's a Norwegian second, there's a Moroccan third, there's a Japanese fourth, and there's an Italian fifth, and a Turk in 6th place. So the international London Marathon run.
And Hugh still makes it look hard. I must say, he's grinding out every mile. Good to see him out in front, but my word, he's working.
What a contrast, actually, looking at Hugh Jones's face and Caverno in second place, who looks so relaxed and easy. And don't ignore this Italian, by the way, wearing 108, Poli. Gianni Poli, best time just inside 2 hours 10 minutes. He won the New York Marathon last year. Seen him around the international scene for some time. He's 29, experienced and a good athlete. Taniguchi, the winner of the Tokyo Marathon in February, number 8. 109 is the Turk, Terzi.
Poli's the man, David, who they said would drop out at 22 miles because he wants to save himself. He just wants to pace himself nicely. But having said that, Chris Brasher late last night was saying if he's up there and there's only 4 or 5 with him, Poli may change that tactic and may blast it all the way in, and he really becomes a danger man then. And we'll hope the Italian selectors will pick him on the time that he runs in the London Marathon. He's the man at the left on the back, Poli of Italy, winner of the New York Marathon. And the Italians have got some tremendous marathon runners at the moment too, like the Japanese. They're a tremendous force at this distance.
Just looking back there, Charlie Spedding and Pujek of Poland are still within striking distance. Peterson of America is fading slightly just in front of them. But doesn't the Norwegian look easy? And there's the Turk, Terzi, coming up on the outside. He's got a best time just inside 2 hours 13 minutes, so he's running a lot faster than that. He's 32 and it was 5th in the London Marathon last year, so he knows his way around. Just checking on the helicopter shot on the gap. Very difficult to check the yardage, but it doesn't look more than 100 yards. Those three have really got to work with each other to get back. Hugh Jones, Taniguchi, Governo, Terzi, Poli, El Mustafa of Morocco. A Briton, a Norwegian, a Japanese, an Italian, a Moroccan and a Turk. Miles. The undeveloped part of Dockland. And they leave Dockland very shortly to turn back towards the Tower of London. And this next part of the course is new this year. They're not going through the old Wapping High Street over the comfortable cobbles. We're going along the highway that leads them back towards the Tower Hotel, St Catherine's Dock and the Tower of London.
And the London Docks Development Board making their best to make them feel welcome. They're responsible for the jazz band that's out there, for the street parties. They really have opened up Docklands, and it's growing day by day. In the wheelchair there, just in the background, that's Patrick Bailey, a 2 hour 33 man, just being overtaken by the lead runner. So he's on course for something like his best time, having only just been overtaken by these 2 hours 8 men that are running past him. Over the wall, you can just see them running in the other direction, over the gap.
And that's a distance of 3 miles. This, the undeveloped part of Docklands, on the other side of the road, the newly developed areas, and they're only about 10-15 metres apart at that point, although 3 miles in distance.
Charlie Spedding there with Pujek of Poland.
The athletes at the top of the picture, 16 miles. Now, those at the top of the picture, they're 19 miles. The athletes in the foreground, 16 miles.
No one so far seen taking a shortcut. Taniguchi.
Interesting point about this lead group, you know. Poli is coached by Dr. Rosa, the Italian, and so too is El Mustafa Nachardi, the Moroccan here. And Dr. Rosa apparently thinks a lot of him. He's got a best time. Nachardi of Morocco of about 2 hours 14 minutes, but he's obviously capable of something better than that. And I suppose here, Brendan, we've really got 2 training companions, although of different nationalities.
Yeah, and just like Saeed Awita, who lives in Italy during the summer and trains in Italy with some of the Italian guys. So obviously this guy's been inspired by his colleague, who's one of the great distance runners in the world. Just looking through the gap there, you can see Charlie Spedding beginning a charge, and you know, he did anticipate yesterday when talking to him that the second half of the race, and the last 6 miles in particular, would be the part of the race where he was going to be running the fastest, almost a reverse split, and so he's expecting this. But I didn't think he expected the group this size to be away from him at this point. But he's cool under pressure, Charlie.
Absolutely, and there's going to be some shock on their faces if they find someone reach them from behind. Doesn't often happen where they come from behind, but you can see the gap now as Taniguchi leads them around the corner. It's about 100 meters, not much more than that. And Charlie Spedding looking good. There's the tower, and here's the leading wheelchair, Chris Hallam. Terrific effort. Disabled Sportsman of the Year in 1986. He's been on the John Dunn Show. He's swimming champion, world record holder, as I said. He's raced on the track, and he's raising a lot of funds for the British Sports Association for the Disabled in Wales. And this is the carving that's going to help. He was delighted in this, because the wheelchair, you can see a little bobble there, but they certainly have eased out the problems of these difficult cobblestones.
News of the women's race, and Christensen is slowing slightly. She's now beyond the 18-mile mark, and accompanied there by 127, who's Bent of Norway, and Dave Ellis of Great Britain. International athlete himself, but she's way, way inside world record pace. On schedule, although slowing slightly, for something around, well, if she goes on at the same pace, 2:19 is the estimated time. But, Brenda, do you feel that she may well have be paying the penalty for that fast start?
Well, I mean, she was running 2:16 pace early on, and she had to slow. She is slowing, but it's not dramatic yet. But I mean, the last 7 or 8 miles are really the test in the marathon. And I couldn't believe how fast she went out. I couldn't believe that she could come back in that sort of same split that she went for the halfway. So she does look to be grimacing a little, and we haven't seen her do that before. Bent Nordvig there, number 127, the other Norwegian, he knows she's there, and he's beginning to encourage her alongside. He's glancing over his shoulder to see that she's okay, but notice how they've both been sheltering her. That's certainly been helping her, but I'm looking at her now, she's grimacing a little.
I just wonder, actually, last year in the closing stages of the race, they were facing a headwind, which, of course, we're remote from here. Whether, in fact, they're sheltering her from the wind, I don't know, because it's significant, in fact, that they've gone shoulder to shoulder in front of her.
That's right, and she's appreciating that, I'm sure. But honestly, if this hadn't been Ingrid Christiansen and I'd seen anybody else running as aggressively as this, I would have had to question the sensibility of it. But with her, she's rewritten the record books many, many times, and she's almost a law unto herself. But following the principles of distance running, she has gone a little quick.
And she's burnt off some very good athletes in the process. They're now trailing badly. But these two lads have done well.
The arches over the mile markers, an innovation this year, and a welcome one too. Athletes know exactly what they're doing. Sometimes they miss the mile markers, but there's no question of that in this wonderfully well-organised London Marathon. Well, there's the 19-mile marker. She's through there in just over 1:40.
And looking at some of the athletes in front of her, she certainly looks as though she's running as well as them. They're struggling rather more than she is. Although we're questioning the pace and the suicidal tactics, as it were, of the first half marathon, the first 10 miles that she ran in world record pace, she's still looking pretty good, is Ingrid Christiansen at this stage.
Well, this is the real hard graft of the race. Chasing world best times and world championship placings. But meanwhile, well, there's a different atmosphere at the back, and Bob Wilson's at his usual place on Tower Bridge.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, what's your name? Eric Newton. I'm a busker from Stoke-on-Trent.
And you playing that same tune when the Saints, you playing it the whole way?
When the Saints go marching in the whole way, yes.
How many times have you played it so far?
239 times so far.
What, to the tower?
To the tower, 239 times.
And how many do you expect to play it?
Well, maybe 400 or so. We'll have to see.
Come on then, give us it.
This one's my little boy Benji. I love you, Benji.
All right, here we go.
Oh, look at that sight. Athletes streaming over Tower Bridge. There's a blue line on the road that the athletes follow at the front, of course. But some of these athletes at the back, well, they can't take the short line. There are too many of them. And I suspect, actually, they run, in fact, something like 28 or 29 miles.
And maybe their time will reflect that, David. Terrific crowds out on the streets. Interested bystanders.
Because I've no talk.
And someone waiting at the mouth.
So just keep
Just caught a glimpse of another monitor then, and I've got a feeling that Charlie Spedding is closing quite rapidly on that leading group. There they are. If we can just look back down the road, Spedding appeared at the last checkpoint to be getting in touch. Kujek of Poland with him.
And Jan-Ove Mattsson in the wheelchair. He's another fast man. That's Chris Hallam's nearest rival. He's a 2 hours 8 man in the wheelchair, and he's just up with them still. That's the big challenge from Sweden, just on the right of these runners. There he is. Jan-Ove, 2 hours 8, and he's not letting them get away. I think he's on a nice little downhill run there. So he's on the same sort of time schedule as these leading elite runners, and he's going well.
A good shot there of the short way round the course. Follow the blue line, the instructions, and John Disley is in charge of the course measurement. And of course, they always take the short line because athletes, if they're driven wide, when they're tired, well, they're not going to go the long way round. So every corner is clipped.
You learn that at a very young age. Always take the shortest route.
Well, the leader's now a familiar sight. There's also another familiar sight at the Tower Bridge, just gone through, and it's Jimmy Savile. And Jimmy's run over 50 marathons.
Jimmy, this marathon's not the same without you. How are you going this year?
Well, 54th and every London up to fresh. What a marvellous day today. A super day, a super race, for super reasons. Fantastic. Where's the finish?
Where's the finish? It's a long way. You're only on 12 miles.
12 miles? Huh? I thought I was on 12 yards to the finish. Oh, 12 miles.
But you enjoy it just as much as ever, Jim.
Looking for the 2:30 today.
2:30?
Yes.
We're all with you.
That's getting back at 2:30.
So, right, OK. See you thereabouts. Bye.
Stoke Mandeville Hospital will surely be all the richer for Jimmy Savile.
Just checking on the men's times there. They've slowed a little bit in the last couple of miles. They've gone over 5 minutes, 5.5 and 5.2. And the leading group still together, but if they are slowing, it could be quite significant with Charlie Spedding trying to run a more even pace race. See what the gap is now. And I've got a feeling, although he may be closing it, it's not closing rapidly enough.
It isn't closing rapidly, but Charlie knows the last 6 miles is the 6 miles that he expected to be really pushing and really forcing the pace, and almost responded immediately where he shot ahead there, ahead of the pole. He would have thought he could have heard what I was saying, but he was talking to me yesterday about the last 6 miles of the race, and he thinks that's his strongest part. He feels to get to 20 miles and then push on from the 20-mile mark. And Ingrid Christensen's there. We've just got a split of her from 18 to 19 miles of 5 minutes and 41 seconds. And when you think she was knocking out the first few miles around about 5 minutes 15 and 5 minutes 20 seconds, she's slowed dramatically there in that 18 to 19 mile mark. And the questions are now starting to be asked, is she going to be strong enough to keep it going. She's the best woman distance runner in the world by a long way right now, but nobody can defy almost the laws of gravity. If you don't run even pace, then you can pay for it in the later stages, and this is a test for Ingrid. She's obviously minutes ahead of any other woman, but she looks to me to be struggling a little. I've never seen her under this much pressure.
And the minders have gone, of course, and they were expected to go because she's not allowed to have pacemakers all the way. They were there really to sort out the crowd, to get her to the water stations and the feeding stations, and now she's on her own. But it is, of course, a big psychological problem. Having got rid of her company, she's literally on her own, and the question mark must be in her mind as she knows and recognises the time and that she's slightly slowing over this second part of the course.
These we believe to be the placings behind Ingrid Christensen, but quite impossible for our cameraman to find the leading women athletes. Priscilla Welsh of Great Britain and Maro of Great Britain, both looking for selection, of course, in the World Championships later this year. Actually, just looking at her, she still looks quite strong, but the clock shows that she's obviously feeling the pressure.
And we've talked about her in relationship to the men and how many men will finish ahead. But really, what has to be said is that she is so far clear ahead of all the other women in the race that really is the significant part, that she is the supreme woman distance runner of the moment. Super weather, calm waters.
That's St Catherine's Dock. Go through St Catherine's Dock and then into the Tower of London, where, if you weren't with us earlier at the start of the programme, we did show you they've laid a special carpet over the cobbles, which will speed up the course and also smooth the passage. Well, it looks like we got a break there as they go through over the carpet. And I'm not quite sure whether that leader is Poli of Italy or the Moroccan Nachardi. But there's certainly been a decisive break. It's Poli of Italy and Taniguchi of Japan, getting away from Hugh Jones and Caverno of Norway. Still, actually, it's the Moroccan Nachardi, who's coached by Poli's coach, and Poli's off the pace now. Nachardi, Al-Mustafa Nachardi, who's run 2 hours 14 minutes, but he's way inside that pace. Being coached in Italy by Dr. Rosa. It's quite often a decisive part of the race, this. They're just beyond 22 miles, and quite often this is where the real break occurs. Charlie Spedding just in the background there, appears to be closing. Al-Mustafa Nachardi on 20. Taniguchi is number 8. Hugh Jones in the blue vest. Caverno of Norway in 4th place. Terzi of Turkey and Poli of Italy 5 and 6. Charlie Spedding 7 and Pujek of Poland 8th.
David, you noticed that every one of them has settled for running on the middle of the carpet, and they were absolutely delighted when Chris Brasher decided that he was able to lay this carpet on this part of the course, because they detest that bit with the couples, you know, because when you run 20 miles, your legs are in pretty brittle shape anyway, and then to have them pounded on uneven surface. Charlie said he really hated that part of the course, and he was almost celebrating when he heard that they were going to carpet it.
I was going to say, Brendan, it was Charlie that struggled last time on those cobbles, and it said it took him months to recover. And so they've done a good job. But it's also a crucial part. Taniguchi was talking to Brasher and was really asking his advice and said if he could get away, when should he break? And he was told at the tower. Well, it's at the tower he's gone. It's a surprising companion he's got with him, running out of his socks at the moment. And Hugh Jones still gritting his teeth and hanging in there, but there is a considerable closing of the gap. Poli looked around and was quite surprised to see Charlie Spedding, and Charlie is closing that gap and may well have paced this marathon superbly.
Well, Talking about pacing, though, the Japanese does look strong, doesn't he? And very, very determined. Check on the times, and they speeded up in the last mile, back inside 5 minutes. John Graham, in fact, of Scotland and Birchfield Harriers, is just going through the Tower of London. And in the mile, the leading wheelchair competitor,
Chris Hallam, and looking good. And on Friday next, he starts a push around Wales, does Chris. 400 miles in 10 days. He's attempting to raise money for the Welsh Sports Centre for the disabled. And he knew he had tough opposition from this Swede today. But he's got away from Jan Ove Madsen. He's missing the company of Jerry O'Rourke, last year's winner, but he was absolutely determined not to be overtaken by the runners. And Chris Hallam, pounding away, done a marvellous job. Such a force for good for the British Sports Association with the disabled, and they were hoping for a win today.
Don't think there's any danger, actually, of the lead men catching him. They're at least a couple of miles behind.
And that means, of course, David, that he's so well inside his best time of 2 hours 13:46, and he's the attempt is to break 2 hours, and he's I think he's on target for that. He wants to break 2 hours and be the first Briton inside 2 hours for a marathon.
Heading now for the embankment.
We've had a couple of the wheelchair athletes, in order to draw attention, they've been doing all sorts of extraordinary things. Mike Karifalidis is a member of the Haringey Athletic Club. They've been abseiling out of the roof of Camden Town Hall, and they've got theirs is the Camden Association for Foster Care, but they're all out there competing for someone else, and they all recognise that there are others who are less fortunate than they, and that's a sobering thought.
Just got just about 3 miles left to go. Hugh Jones still grafting away in third place. Reflecting all the pain of the marathon for some people, and yet these two look so relaxed.
Here's Chris Hallam.
Two leaders look as if they're stretching away a little bit. Some news of Gordon Pirrie, by the way. He's just gone through 16 miles and looking quite sprightly and fresh. Outside the course record time, apparently, but I think these leaders are speeding up, judging the way they're going away.
It looks as though the last mile, 4:58, means they have injected a bit of pace. Taniguchi's got away and injected a bit of pace there, and that's when it hurts most.
Well, we've just heard some more news from Ingrid Christensen. She's run the last 3 miles in 5 minutes 40 seconds, and now, while she's set halfway and she was on schedule for around 2 hours 16 minutes, I'm now doubting myself whether she's going to go under 2 hours 20 minutes. And once you go in a marathon, they never come back. You don't start speeding up in the last few miles once you've struggled like that. So well, obviously she's paying the price, but let's hope she can go close to her best, which is 2 hours 21. That would be a world best, and that would be a great performance, but I'm beginning to doubt that even.
Well, this race is really balling up now. El Mustafa Achadi, 1:20. Taniguchi of Japan, number 8. Between 23 and 24 miles now. Actually, with the athletes going onto the bridges along the embankment, The picture being bounced back to the satellite from the mobile camera. A little bit difficult to pick up on occasions. Actually, that was rather interesting there, Taniguchi looking across. He didn't look so happy then at Nachardi. Did you notice that, Brendan?
He was certainly aware he was with him, but I mean, you can never tell, because we talked earlier about Hugh Jones, who was grimaces all the way around. You could never tell how strongly he was running from it. But neither of these two athletes are very well known to us at all. In fact, the Moroccan is a real surprise. But I'll tell you what's often interesting in the sport, you know this is better than I do, David, but when you get a good athlete like Iwata, and like in the New Zealanders get great athletes, you often get one coming along who's been inspired by him. And this man, I'm sure, has been inspired by Saeed Iwata.
Indeed. Meanwhile, the first man home in the wheelchair race.
And it's Chris Hallam who's led throughout. And he sees this, as I say, as a warm-up for his 400-mile ride drive around Wales. And it's been a magnificent effort. I think he's going to have a lifetime best. 2 hours 13:46 was his best before today. They set off. It's difficult to say because they set off earlier than the runners. But Chris Hallam done so much for the cause. Last cobblestones. And the finish line in sight. Have a tremendous reception, I'm sure of that. All those hours of 1:58.23. Oh, this is superb. This is going to break 2 hours. This is quite magnificent. Whatever other records go today, that is undoubtedly a lifetime best and a new British best for Chris Hallam on wheels. 1:58.39. A magnificent effort.
Meanwhile, Ingrid Christensen behind that timing float. Just under 4 miles left.
And she's picking up some company again. 26th there.
John Boys of Bournemouth, useful athlete. Also up there is 96, Richard Tuff of Sunderland.
And John Harris in the wheelchair wearing 39.
It's Savary, 1:17. 2:23 marathon.